and hit the record. You might have had something pop up on your screen to approve the recording, and we'll go from there, sir.
Is recorded by a host or a participant. Pay will come afterwards in the form of an apple pie. Got it. How's that?
Yes, sir. All right, Mr. Moore, if you could state your full name for me.
Kenneth Wayne Moore.
And when and where were you born, sir?
In a little place called Lawrenceburg, Tennessee.
And
it is about 70 miles south of Nashville, about 10 miles north of Alabama. It's the county seat. It was the largest place in the county. It had 8,000 people.
And when and where were you born? Or let me rephrase that. When were you born? What year?
1943 in November.
And
I don't know if you have a little time. Do you have,
yes, sir.
Do you have some time today?
Absolutely.
Okay. My dad and his father and his father have all been in the military. I had one great grandfather that was a general in the Union War, for the Union in the Civil War. And he was in charge of Grant's cavalry, stayed in Tennessee after the Civil War was over because there's no states anymore. It was a territory. And his cavalry regiment provided the administration and police force and everything for about 8 to 10 counties in southern Tennessee. So he stayed there for 3 years on active duty and whatever. And finally, Tennessee became a state again. They had elections, and he walked off into the sunset and became a retired farmer.
Wow.
Except when his son passed away in 1957, we took some old dome top trunks up in his attic. I don't know if you've ever been in these old houses with this insulation that's just thrown between the rafters.
Yes, sir.
If you ever get it on, you never get it off. It itches like you can't believe. So we took 23 of these dome top trunks and pulled them down by rope from the attic. I was up there doing it. My dad and his brother, my uncle was. They took them out in the yard under a peach tree, and they started to open them up. And all of a sudden, they became really concerned. They took these things out. There were 21 Ku Klux Klan uniforms there.
Wow.
And then they had a logbook that was about 2 inches thick, about 18 inches high, about 4 inches thick. And it had the meetings of the Ku Klux Klan that was started in his property about 10 miles out of Lawrenceburg, on a farm, in September 1865. So he was a Union guy. The other significant party that started the Ku Klux Klan was a guy named General Nathan Bedford Forrest, cavalry officer for the South in the Civil War. And both of them got out of it after about 6 or 7 months because it became a violent organization and not what they intended, to reinforce the law and order, in essence. So that was kind of what my great grandfather was about. His son was a cavalry person. In 1898, the Tennessee 37th Cavalry, which went to Fort Drum, New York, and trained in the wintertime. And they didn't have winter uniforms. They had summer cotton shirts, and that was it. And they had cut the holes in blankets with a piece of rope and tied it around them to keep warm. And that went on for about 3 months. And they got on a train, went to Tampa, Florida, and they invaded Cuba with Teddy Roosevelt, and as a cavalry regiment. And they offloaded the horses off the ships, those old sailing ships and whatever. And most of the horses drowned because they wouldn't swim ashore or follow anybody. So they became a foot regiment. They went up San Juan Hill with Teddy Roosevelt, and Teddy Roosevelt did not get first, but he got there second. And that was the end of the Spanish-American War. Except he still had 2 years of active duty, so they sent him around South America, around to the Philippines, which is about a 3-month cruise. And they came to the Philippines, and they fought the final battle of Manila in the Philippines. And the funny thing was that the Spanish got in touch with the Americans the day before the battle took place, and they arranged a mock battle to take place and a surrender to take place 1 hour after the initial fighting started. And someone had this all prearranged, apparently, because they fired some cannons, they fired them over the heads of the Americans fired some rounds and whatever, and then they called a cease at exactly 11 o'clock in the morning. The war was over. But during that conflict, my grandfather's life, this general's son, was saved by a Spanish officer named Carlos Bernard. And Carlos Bernard was a dashing looking Spanish with highly polished leather holster and boots and spurs and, dapper mustache and big handlebar mustache, and really a dashing looking character. So my grandfather, years later, when he had children, he was pretty young then, but he had children right after that. He named each one of his two sons. The first one's middle name was Carlos, and the second was Bernard. My dad's name was Thomas Bernard Moore, and that's my grandfather. So his son Thomas enlisted in the Navy before World War II as a CB electrician, and he was in the Philippines when MacArthur surrendered. And his unit had just gone out to Mount Titiburo, about 400 miles out of Manila, and they had built a top secret broken Japanese code communication tower that only MacArthur could get that information. Only the the theater commander could get that information. And they just finished that when MacArthur surrendered, bugged out, and went to Australia, so they're stranded. And they lived off the land there for a couple of months. They went Navy guys, which had 25 Marine security guard, had picked up another 100 or so people that were left there when MacArthur left. There were thousands of people left there, and they just fended for themselves, surrendered or whatever. So Dad's unit didn't want to do that, and they were Navy guys, so they decided to steal a Navy ship, because the Navy left all these little ships around there, supply ships and everything, when MacArthur surrendered and got out of there. And so these Navy guys got on this ship. It wasn't very big, about 150 to 200 feet. And they tried to get the anchor up, and they couldn't get the anchor up. They didn't know how. They were metalsmiths, welders, electricians, plumbers, and all that. So they had to do it manually. They put 10 men on one link of the chain, 10 men on another link, 10 men on another link, 10 minutes. And it took them 42 hours to get the anchor up before they got it away.
Wow.
And that was the least of their problem, because they navigate. They didn't know how to use a sea chart. They didn't know how to do celestial navigation. They didn't have a map of where Mindoro was. They knew it was big. It's directly south, but they finally made it after about 90 days. And they joined up with some guerrilla units there under the command of a guy named Wendell Furtag. Maybe you've read about this in history or not, but he was very famous. He was a Dow Chemical salesman when the war started, and the Army recruited him to blow up these major guns in Corregidor. Corregidor is a little island in the middle of Manila Bay, and it had 14-inch naval guns that had been put on rails to fire. It could totally control the harbor. But the night before MacArthur surrendered, they hired this guy who was an explosive expert from Dow Chemical to go in and blow up the breeches on each one of those weapons before they surrendered. And the Army didn't have any money to pay him, so they made him a major in the Army Reserve. Well, he made it down to Mindoro, and he spoke 5 or 6 different dialects of Philippine language, and he was really, really valuable. But he found out that Filipinos wouldn't follow anybody that wasn't a general, so he promoted himself to brigadier general. And he had the silversmith knock out 2 stars and put him on his collar, and he had a little one of those sandpan hats that he wore, and he had a big red goatee that came down, that he wrapped cord around, came down about 8 inches below his chin. If you see him history books, he's quite phenomenal, and he'll come up a little bit later, because the Army did not like what he did, because he made the Army look really bad. He formed this into a very effective guerrilla unit, and they were extremely effective during that war when they were actually cast aside by the United States government. And it was a very emotional thing for my dad. So my dad was he's a little course, but he was also a radio tech, like a ham tech. In high school. They built transceiver radios and those things. They found a Loman on Mindoro that had a big clunker table radios. Way before your time, you've probably never seen one. But these things were wooden. They were about 3 feet wide and about 1.5 feet high and square. And they had these big tubes in them, and big dial you turn on the front. And they made that into a transceiver. And every night they broadcast in the direction of America so that they could get in touch with American forces. After about a week, they got a message back one night from the Naval Communications Station, San Francisco. Have you ever been there?
No, sir.
San Francisco? Well, it's not in San Francisco. It's actually 250 miles out of San Francisco, up in where the Donner Pass is.
Yes,
up
sir.
in the mountains, the other border. That's where it really is. And they said, we're in it. We need help. We need assistance. Keep in contact with us. And they came back and said, General MacArthur says there's no resistance movement in the Philippines. He was in Australia then. And okay, that kind of dashed that. They came back and said, yes, there is. We've got a very large unit of Filipinos, and we have probably 800 Americans and maybe 24,000 Filipinos. So he said, who's your commanding officer? Brigadier General Wendell Furtag. They came back 3 days later. No General Furtag, U.S. Army. That's not true. So they sent a message back to this communication station, said, this is Mrs. Furtag's address in Cincinnati, Ohio. She lives on this street, this house number, this is their telephone. Contact her and she'll tell you the rest of the story. And they did. And they found out that this is a very effective guerrilla unit. They sent a submarine out there, the USS Norwalk, to confirm this. The Marine recon team got off the submarine. They found dead bunch of cast-asides after a couple of weeks. And they took one of the Army majors and 2 other people and sent them back on the submarine. They went to the White House and briefed the president. The president then authorized them to have $250,000 in gold bullion. And in the 20 days that they were back there, they told about these, the Filipinos couldn't, have you ever fired an M1?
Yes,
you know
sir.
what that is? Okay, an M1 is like an M14. It fires the same round, but it kicks like a mule. It takes a lot of muscle and a lot of coordination, and you never want to have it off your shoulder when you fire it, because it does damage. The Filipinos got broken shoulders from firing it. They're little bitty guys, about 100, 110 pounds. And so they told the president about this. He authorized to make a new weapon called the M1 carbine. It fires a little 45 pistol round. It's a little bitty thing, but it doesn't kick like the other thing. They said those in the service for years after that. And all the officers wanted one because they're light. And, the ammunition doesn't weigh very much and whatever. But anyway, that's just the story of the M1 carbine. But they got it back out there. Then they took all the Americans that were there that were expatriated, that were cast aside, and they sent them home. And they got 7 days leave. And that was in January, February of 42. And they found out that Dad went back overseas. I got conceived while he was there. I was born 9 months later. And that's the story of how that happened. And it was kind of funny.
That's one.
Well, anyway, that's my background. Go ahead.
It's a hell of a family legacy to have, though, from the Civil War through the Spanish-American War to World War II. I mean, that's incredible.
Well, everybody's got a story, but from there, I just grew up with my dad. My dad's a great guy. Uh, he worked hard and was a good provider. He didn't like sports. Never done sports. He wanted me to play in the band in high school. Yeah. Anyway, I didn't, but I did go. I did well in school, academically and otherwise, and I. We watched a movie last night that we hadn't seen in years called American Graffiti,
Yes, sir.
and it reminded me a lot of my years in high school. uh, anyway, I had a great childhood. My mother got me in swimming class because I had asthma really bad until I was about 10 years old. She got me in a swimming class, and that cleared up and I never had it again. But I became a good swimmer and those things, and worked as a lifeguard at summertime in the pool for $25 a week, 70 hours, $25 a week. And you know what they did? They paid us $25 a week. So when I got my first paycheck, it was $19.15. I said, this is wrong. I got $25, for 60 hours a week. And they said, we had to take out taxes. I'd never heard of that. I was a hick, whatever. But I played baseball in high school, and I had a great luck of the draw because one of the guys in our hometown was a guy named Luke Hendricks. Luke Hendricks was a hero, bigger than life to kids in town, and he had one of the 4 little league teams. He played for the Boston Red Sox with Ted Williams in the outfield. He also was a Marine Corps pilot in World War II in Korea. They flew with Ted Williams both in both of those conflicts. So Williams missed 5.5 years of his baseball career because he's involved in wars as a military pilot. And this guy was with him in both tours. He tells the story. Do you mind if I tell this? It's just kind of
go
funny.
for it. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
They're out in Guadalcanal in the Pacific, and Williams comes in, flying the plane, lands on the expeditionary strip there, runs over in his Jeep to the baseball field because they're playing baseball there. And this guy's got his third, not only no-hitter, perfect game going. And he came over in his flight boots and his flight suit, and he hit a home run over the right fielder's head that went about 600 feet. And the pitcher lost the game, but it was just about that was in the 9th inning. He had to get 2 more batters out, and his name was Satchel Paige, who I don't know if you know who he is. He is bigger than life in baseball. And years later, Luke Hendricks was my baseball coach. He took me to Nashville. The Nashville Vols was a pro team up in Nashville, I think class 3, whatever. And Satchel Paige was pitching. He took me out to the mound and showed me his cleat marks in the ground. And he was perfect. He always put his foot down exactly in the same place. And he was pretty remarkable then. He was probably 45 years old then. Unbelievable.
Wow.
So I played baseball, played tennis in high school, played little basketball, but not on teams that competed in the high school. And well, I was really good in baseball. I led the league in hitting for 2 years, and Babe Ruth League and Little League. Football, had a great career there as a defensive back and as a wide receiver, wing back, whatever. And my mother was a state tennis champion for 2 years, and she raised me with a little cutoff tennis racket hitting tennis balls against the garage door. So I played tennis, and I came in 3rd in the state as a freshman in high school. And when that happened, my football coach, freshman year, came over to see me and said, "Kenny, congratulations. But you're going to have to make a decision next spring. You're either going to play spring football practice or you're going to play this wussy sport, tennis." your choice. And of course, I didn't give in to pressure like that, but I never picked up a tennis racket again in high school. Anyway, so that's my experience growing up in this little hick town in Tennessee.
Wow. It's one heck of
What
an
other questions do
experience.
you have?
Well, with that, I mean, you've got this great high school career with sports, great grades. So, what leads you to the Naval Academy? Of all places to go to, what led you down that path?
They used to have this TV program called Men of Annapolis, Men of West Point. They had an alternate thing each day, and I just watched it. And I thought, yeah, it looks good. I like that, and I just set a goal to go there. And I graduated as president of my senior class. Graduated, I think, third in the class in academics and whatever. So I applied for it, but I applied for it. I didn't know you had to advance. So I didn't apply in time, and I couldn't get an appointment. But the representative said, "I got a thing that says the internet connection is unstable. Is
It's
that okay
okay
on
on
your
this end.
end?"
Yeah, we're still good.
Okay, good. So I applied and I couldn't get an appointment to the Naval Academy that year, and so the representative said, "How about the military academy?" I don't know. So I decided to go up there and take a shot at it. He would give me an appointment if I passed the test to get in. So I had to stay in West Point, New York, in the month of March. And I'm from Tennessee, and I had a light jacket, a little windbreaker type thing. And I got up there, and there was a foot and a half of snow on the ground, and it was 20 degrees outside constantly. They left the windows open at night, and we slept under these great big fluffy, they call them brown boy goose down comforters. That's great. He froze to death during the daytime. I took the mental test, took the physical test, passed both of them, and uh, I guess I could have got the appointment. But it was horrible living up there that time of year. I couldn't believe it's like going for survival training or something. But so I had a rental car. I drove back down to Washington D.C. I was going to fly to New York, but I decided, I've got a day and a half. Why don't I go down to the Naval Academy? It's only 250 miles south, and look and see what it's like. So I drove down there and got there on a Saturday afternoon, and they had just stopped classes, had noon meal formation, and they're in white uniforms with short sleeves, nice looking, great uniforms, and they had these really attractive gals all over the place over there to date the midshipmen in about 30 minutes when they released, and they had tulips on this huge walkway there. The buildings were nice. Sailboats on the river out there, and said, you know what? I can wait a year. So I went to college a year and decided to wait a year, and I got in the next year, and it was a good decision. I think it helped me expand my academic background and study some engineering and some other things that I really was interested in. And that's kind of how I got to the Naval Academy.
Now, at that point, were you considering the Marine Corps at all prior to the academy? Had that came across your mind yet, or what were you leaning towards?
Well, everybody loved the Marine Corps. We've seen those John Wayne films, all those things from World War II in Korea. And yeah, but I wasn't focused on that. Actually, I wanted to be a naval aviator, I wanted to be a pilot. And that was my goal in life and whatever. And that they had, and then with the Naval Academy, they only take, in that days, 6% of the graduates were allowed to go in the Marine Corps. And they divided it up into half in the upper part of the class, half in the lower part of the class. And I was very, very fortunate by the grace of God to get in the Marine Corps because I got the last billet in the upper part of the class.
Wow.
Uh, I spent 3 months in the hospital, my plebe year, and then same operation, pineal cyst operation from football. I had to have had to have another operation sophomore year, so I missed all these months of academics and of course sports and things. So it was really a tough thing, but they left it open and it couldn't. Anyway, that it healed very nicely the second time, but it took forever because they didn't sew it up. They just let it heal from the inside out, and it was a task, but it's worthwhile. So I got the last billet that was available to go in the Marine Corps, and I still had an aviation guarantee, and that's going to be an aviator. But things changed. I become more associated with what was available and what life was about in those areas. I didn't have much to go on, except I had a company officer at the Naval Academy named Tom Richardson, Captain Tom Richardson, Force Recon. He was tough as nails. He was perfect in everything that he did, and everybody wanted to be like him. In fact, we had 81 graduates that went into the Marine Corps that year, and he had 11 of them come out of his company.
Wow.
There's 36 companies, so he had an overabundance of people, and we kept up with them. And I went to basic school with all of them, and it was absolutely great. But we saw a tremendous difference between the naval officers and the Marine Corps officers at the Naval Academy. And I guess if there's a reason, that's probably it, because we were exposed to some superior leaders. And most of them had some kind of combat experience or combat capability.
Now, did Captain Richardson have time in
sense?
Korea? It does make sense, yes, sir. Did Captain Richardson have combat time in Korea?
Oh, he didn't, but he had a tour. He had a tour in Vietnam already.
Wow. And so,
but he was just bigger than life in so many ways.
So you've got Captain Richardson being this excellent role model and showing you the capabilities of a Marine officer. So what's life like as a cadet? What are some of the things that you go through on a daily basis in this time period?
Well, that's probably the best thing about the Naval Academy. It was extremely disciplined in that day. You got up at exactly at 6 o'clock in the morning. You had to stay in bed till then. If you're an underclassman, you had to go to bed exactly at 11 o'clock at night, unless you got into your blankets and studied, or you went down in the the athletic locker room and camped out there, which we did when you had papers to do and all sorts of other things. It was illegal to do it, but hopefully you wouldn't get caught. But it was a rigorous, very rigorous daily schedule. You had classes from 8 till 11:30 or 11:30, and from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock, 4:30 every day. And then you went straight classes 7 days a week, just to noon on Saturday. And then you had immediate athletics in the afternoon. It was a very tight schedule, which there are a lot of people that broke the standards, that broke these rules and things, and usually they suffered consequences. Funny. You don't have time for a side story, I know, but I had a classmate, and he was infamous, and he dated the commandant of the Naval District's daughter. Now, there's the Naval Academy Command at Cinder, and we're at this guy's a 3-star admiral, and he lives there on the housing at the Naval Academy. And he had known this gal forever, and he dated her. And it's wintertime, and they tried this thing for extra duty. If you ever got demerits, you had to go out on Saturday afternoon, march them off. 5 5 demerits every hour. And if you got 20 demerits, you had to go out and march. And he did that on a Saturday afternoon. It started raining. So you didn't have to go outside and march anymore. So you just had to go to your room and go down to the battalion office and report in. And they would check you off for that hour. And you got your 5 demerits off the books. So he was there and he decided, well, why not? So he called his girlfriend, the admiral's daughter, and said, Bonnie, why don't you come over to Bancroft Hall and go in the athletic locker room? And exactly after 2 o'clock, I'll have my laundry bag down there. Get in the laundry bag, put yourself in the elevator, close up the laundry bag, and I'll march down the hall and get it. And you get on the elevator and push the 4th floor, and it'll come up to the top of Bancroft Hall. And he did. So he entertained her in his room for a couple of hours. And it's now almost time for evening meal. He takes this he takes this laundry bag over his shoulder down, puts it on the elevator, goes down to the athletic floor, which is where the athletic locker room, where you keep your workout stuff and things. And she's getting off the elevator. The only problem was the Naval Academy officer of the day was making rounds then as he's getting ready to go around and see the formations for evening meal. And he's waiting to get on the elevator. Well, she's the admiral's daughter, and he knows the admiral very well, and he knows exactly who she is. And the company officer said, Bonnie, what are you doing on the elevator in Bancroft Hall? Does your dad know this? Who? Oh, wait a minute. Let me see that laundry bag. The laundry bag has your name and your room number on it. I mean, it's written in big magic marker. So his name and his room number is on there. Well, he was then invited to continue his education at another institution. And I didn't see him for years later, but he did marry her, and he did win an NROTC scholarship at a civilian school, and he graduated. And the next time my son was at Mount Fuji, Japan, he was a Marine captain. Anyway, it's funny. These things that happen are.
I mean, it sounds like there's
Okay, where were we?
plenty of shenanigans at the academy in itself. Class wise, what kind of classes were you doing? Were you doing classes about
Well,
military
let me tell
tactics?
one other thing.
Go for it.
A bit. Well, yeah, it's a bit. We learn more about naval tactics and formations and ship capabilities and those things than you did the Marine Corps, which is kind of too bad. But they did have a core training thing where we made an amphibious landing in Little Creek, Virginia for about 3 weeks, and it was not really great. But we had such great examples of leadership there from the Marine Corps that their job was to recruit the cream of the crop to go in the Marine Corps. And the Navy didn't like it because they did really well recruiting people. But that's kind of how things worked. I did. I wanted to be an aviator, so I couldn't wait to go to Pensacola second class summer. I couldn't wait, and it's going to happen in 3 days. We're there. We've just finished testing everything, and my roommate, who failed an eye exam and couldn't be an aviator anymore, and he was extremely brilliant, resigned and decided to go to the University of Kentucky and become a doctor. And he did. Well, the company officer called me on a Thursday and said, Moore, Jennings resigned yesterday. I've got to send somebody on the plebe detail this summer to take his place. So I've selected you. I said, sir, I don't want to do the plebe detail. I want to go to Pensacola. I want to learn to fly. I want to be an aviator. Well, that's the way it's going to be. I said, well, what about if I find somebody to take my place? He said, okay, get back in touch with me. I did. I found somebody to take my place. So I went back to him on Friday and told him, and he said, oh, I had to turn that in yesterday. It's already done. You're on the detail this summer. So I stayed there on the plebe detail. And it was like being a drill instructor. And I really loved it. It was a tremendous experience, and I like that aspect, the troop leading aspect of that. And we won several awards as the best unit there at the Naval Academy that summer. So that kind of got me in going in the direction of the Marine Corps also. I'm sorry I didn't get the thing, but I did get an aviation guarantee, and I could have gone into the aviation in the Marine Corps. But once I was exposed to the basic school, it was never. It was wonderful, wonderful experience.
Now, in your summers, did
Do you
you
know
go
anything
to the?
about the basic school?
I do, yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Now, in
Go
the
ahead, please.
summers, at the academy, would you go to the basic school and do boot camp or officers training at that time period?
Uh, we didn't get to do it then. There's no cross pollination then. But later, after my first tour in Vietnam, I was back at the basic school teaching. And I was just finished up there, and I was getting ready to go to grad school. I mean, the Army Warfare School, Army Mid-Level Warfare School at Fort Benning, Georgia. And I got called in one day and said, we've got to do a Naval Academy training here, and you're the guy. You're gonna be in charge of that program. So you construct the program, tell us what you need, what your training schedule is, and all that stuff. So I did that for the Naval Academy guys one summer. I missed out on going to the Army school and got to go to the Marine school instead at the end of that summer. But it was a learning experience, and that was my association with the Naval Academy. But I never had, I've never regretted at all, because when I got to the basic school, it was probably the most professional school I've ever been in. The staff were mostly combat veterans. They were the cream of the crop in their areas, scouting and patrolling, land navigation, all the other skills that you learn, the tactics, the defensive things. And you weren't allowed to teach a course there if you hadn't participated in that type of activity, which is amazing. Later on, I'll tell you that later, but I was chosen to, after my staff platoon commander experience, I went back to the basic school for duty. I was there for 2 years. And when my time as a platoon commander was over, I had to go into the instruction thing for the last year there. And they put me in company tactics. I didn't want to go to company. I wanted to be in platoon tactics, which is, what a rifle platoon commander is. That's the backbone of everything there. Company tactics is an upgraded version, much more complicated. But I've taught there, and I was sent there because I was the only guy at the basic school that night attack in combat. And that's a big part of what we may get into later. But anyway, it was a situation that this is what I found out. I was never, ever confronted with anything in actual combat or leadership experience that I wasn't prepared for. The instruction was that good. It was that good and that complete. And it was an unbelievable experience to go to basic school. And the curriculum was divided into 3 areas: leadership, academics, and military skills, such as rope climbing, swimming, 3-mile run, those things, qualifying at the rifle range, qualifying at the pistol range, all those things go into the military skills thing, and then the academics speak for themselves. But the leadership things are things that you've been put in charge out there, and you're great on your leadership capability. And it was a real experience. So when I graduated from basic school, I graduated #1 in my class out of 250 in leadership in the military skills area, and I did not get academics because I had spent a week in the hospital for doing something really, really stupid before it started. One of my basic school classmates, before the instruction started, had this pellet pistol. And he was in his room shooting this pellet pistol across the hall from me. And he said, "Why don't you hold this can out there and I'll shoot it out of your hand?" Well, he did, because he shot me in the finger. And we had to go to the hospital and have it extracted and then explain that to the staff and whatever. But unbelievable.
Oh, goodness.
Life's fun.
Amen to that. Now, if I may take it back slightly, Mr. Moore, when did you graduate from the Naval
Sure.
Academy?
In 1966,
And
2 June 1966.
what was that feeling like for you to be a Naval Academy graduate, knowing you're going into the Marine Corps to be an officer?
I thought it was wonderful. I can't tell you how blessed I felt to be selected in that group, and I was extremely prepared. I thought, physically, mentally, and otherwise. But I thought it was wonderful.
Now, by this point, you've heard about Vietnam, and were you wanting to go to Vietnam as a rifle platoon commander?
That's a good question, and the answer is everybody went to Vietnam. Either before flight school, after whatever else you were going to do, after artillery school, everybody went to Vietnam. So we had, I think, 81 Naval Academy grads there. Two of them went to grad school, that they had won this, Fulbright scholarship or something like that. And 79 of us went to artillery school, whatever, tank school, Amtrak, whatever you're going to do. But the infantry guys were as prepared as they would be, and they went over. So I was on a plane with 39 of my Naval Academy classmates that had graduated with me, and we went to Vietnam at the same time. And it
Now,
was an experience.
now what time frame is this? When did you arrive in Vietnam?
27 March 1967.
Now, and to take it back just a little bit, with your time at the basic school, who were some of the officers that you remember and your instructors that had combat experience that left an impression on you?
Let me think about that. It's been a while since I've got over their names. I'll probably have to do a memory thing to get those back. We had a great scouting patrolling, and scouting patrolling was just wonderful. We had good tactics guys. We had Buzz Buse as my platoon commander there, my administrative platoon commander, and his dad was a 3-star general of the Marine Corps. He was by far the best staff officer in our company. And Patty Collins was the was the scouting patrolling guy. Who was salty as can be and unbelievable. Tony Zenny was one of the instructors there. Did a really great job teaching tactics. Red Miller was head of company tactics, and he was bigger than life to lots of people. Give me a second.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Norm. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine, sir. No worries. Don't apologize.
So that's a couple of the ones that were really good, and we had some also rans also, but the people that stood out were really stood out. Uh, Patty Collins taught scouting and patrolling. I used almost everything I learned from him at one time or other. Same thing about different things, and I'm not sure we might have time for that today. But by the way, do you have time to continue this at another time?
Absolutely, Mr. Moore.
Well, I've got another event coming up this afternoon, and I'm going to check off pretty soon. But I'll be glad to stay as long as I can and answer as many questions as I can.
Oh, that'd be fantastic, sir.
If you like, if you like.
Well, I definitely think one question that I would like to get into and just jump ahead of myself. So when did you first arrive with India 35?
I'll never forget it. We were on a plane going over from, sad stories and memories. We were on a plane going into Guam, Kadena Air Force Base, and we had to change planes there and go into Vietnam. So we got off and got your stuff out, and then we went to Okinawa, and you left your stateside uniforms and all your stuff in a sea bag there, and they put it aside for you for a year and a half till you came back. So then we go out to the airfield and get on this airplane to go to Vietnam. And all these, it's about 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night. It's dark. Out there on the runway is this white table with a white tablecloth with communion on it. I mean, communion dishes and things. And we thought, gosh, they must be really bad. They're giving us last rites before we even go there. Well, it wasn't. They're giving out these St. Christopher medals just to the Catholics and whatever. But then I got to have a little wine or whatever you had with communion. But it kind of had us a little tight. It must have been really bad there. So we got there and got over to the commanding general of the 1st Marine Division. And we had the stateside utilities on, starched, whatever, and pretty good shape. But so we had to see the commanding general and have a personal interview with him before we could be assigned to a unit. And the first day something happened and we couldn't do it. So we were standing around a concrete slab porch out there around the building that we were supposed to meet the CG in. And it didn't happen. The next day, it went up to about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We finally got in to see him. So there's probably 150 of us. The general came in, this little short general came in and said, "Men, welcome to Vietnam." He said, "I hope you're the 1/3 of this group that does not get killed or wounded. 1/3 of you will be killed or wounded. 1/3 of you will make a small unit tactical area and be relieved for cause. And 1/3 of you will have a great tour. I hope you're in the last third. Welcome aboard." So everybody goes, your morale went from here down to here. Okay. Okay. Then I flew down to Chulai. So I was assigned to 5th Marines. They were about 90 miles south of Da Nang. And I went down to Chulai and got aboard a Jeep. Then it went out to this area that had 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines in it. Signed to 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines. I had to wait around there for a while in the afternoon. Then I got assigned to India Company. So I went out to India Company, and I'm waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And nothing happens. I mean, we're just waiting. So while we're waiting there, I really had to go to the restroom. I hadn't been, since we got on the plane. And I really needed to go, and I said, where's the latrine? They said, it's up there on top of the hill. So I went out and looked up on top of this hill. They were dropping flares around this area at night, around your defensive area. And I go up there, and there's 2 other people in front of me. And it's it's a two thing outhouse, with a barrel under you. I mean, it's crude as can be. They just put diesel fuel in them and fire those things up and clean up, sanitize them every morning. So I'm waiting there to get in. I'm now doing the two-step. You hardly, and this flare ship goes over, and these flares are, I've never seen aircraft flares like that before, but they light up probably 800 to 900, maybe 1,000 meters of the battlefield, like sunlight. I mean, and they last about 5 minutes. And the flare is a parachute. They drop them out of airplanes, and it's got a sleeve like an artillery shell. Do you know what those are like?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And when it drops out, that sleeve slides off. When it slides off, it ignites the flare. It's like a match. And so this big flare now is below the parachute, and it goes out for 5 minutes or so, maybe even longer. Unbelievable communication. Well, that brass thing that fell off of the flare went through the roof of the two-holer and hit the guy sitting in there on the leg and broke his left leg.
Jesus.
So not only is he compromised, not only is he injured, but he's embarrassed. And we pulled him out of there and cleaned him up a little bit. And, I asked this enlisted guy, where's the sick bay? Where's the doctor? He said, oh, it's up in Battalion. Well, where is that? I haven't found Battalion yet. And anyway, so meanwhile, it goes on and on and on. I finally make it over to the company I'm assigned to, India Company, and it's now 11:30 at night. And this XO comes in, who's an old Mustang, who's just a. He said, "Well, Lieutenant said you're going to take over the 3rd platoon, and I hope you have a better tour than the guy that had it before." I said, "What do you mean, sir?" He said, he was the first lieutenant, former enlisted guy, great guy. He said, well, he just finished his tour. He was 13 months and 10 days here, and he was getting ready to go home tomorrow morning, and he went out to use the head out there tonight, and this flare came through the roof and hit him in the leg and broke his leg. And now he's went out to the USS Repos. He'll be there for 3 months in traction. So that's my welcome aboard. And it's funny.
Wow.
Anyway, so then I got assigned to India. We didn't do very much for the first probably 20 days, patrolling, that type of thing, day type activities. Not much really going on, and I had contact during that time period.
Now, do you have time for a couple of more questions?
I do.
So, did any of the enlisted or other officers resent or give you problems with you being a Naval Academy graduate?
Not to my knowledge.
And
I don't think so.
How would you
At
describe?
least
Go
it
ahead,
was never
sorry.
open. It was never open.
And so, with that, how would you describe the men of 3rd Platoon that you took command of? Is it daunting taking over the command of an experienced platoon?
No, I never even considered that. It was combat. It was a Marine unit, but I felt like not only but I studied hard and practiced everything that they taught at basic school. And I want to tell you, it was a heck of a curriculum. I graduated #1 in, the leadership aspect and then the military aspect. And out of my class, out of 250 people, and I thought I was extremely well prepared. Um, I can't think of one thing. Can't think of one thing
Yes,
that I
sir.
was really concerned about.
Now, in this time period of,
But
go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Well, I was going to ask, in this time period of spring 1967, was India Company using M14s or M16s at this time?
M14. The
And
M14 is a wonderful weapon.
now, as an officer, did you carry an M14 before the transition to the 16, or did you carry a 45 pistol?
I did. I did. Had a pistol, kept the pistol in a pack, carried an M14. You know why?
Why?
You don't want to look different because you're a target. If you look different, you're a target. And the North Vietnamese, as I found out, I didn't know this, but as I found out, the North Vietnamese snipers were extremely good. And they picked out targets. And in my experiences for the next couple of months, um, the important casualties, the ones that really hurt, were the officers that were taken out. I had one, two, three company commanders, several platoon commanders were taken out because they stood out, and that was. We probably won't get there today, but I'd really like to tell you about an experience that happened on the second of June, and it was a remarkable day in my life, and it probably illustrates most of the things that you're concerned about or you would like to know about.
And that's
But
Operation
that's
Union
kind of
2.
down the pike from. Pardon me?
And that was Operation
I
Union
didn't hear that.
2,
Could you say it
2,
again, please?
2 June
As the
time
Operation
period.
Union 2.
Yes, sir. Now, speaking of
Now, you seem
operations,
to know a lot about what happened there.
I try to do my research to make it sound like that I know what I'm talking about. That way that you know that I'm not here to bullshit, that I'm here for serious matters.
Good. So, what books have you read?
Road of 10,000 Pains, which is a course from Union all the way to Operation Swift. And then I've read a book, a little memoir by a Marine who was with Fox 25 called Within the Tiger's Grasp. And it was his experience on 2 June 1967 with Fox Company.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I missed what the last part of what you said. It didn't come through.
Um, the second book I've read was called Within the Tiger's Grasp, but it was about Fox Company 25 on 2nd June 1967.
We didn't have much. I didn't have much association with Fox Company. I don't know much about them. A Delta Company, I know a lot about.
Yes.
1-5. Uh,
Now, quick question, if I may.
Go ahead.
Did any of the India veterans ever mention Operation Hastings, which happened in July 1966?
All of them.
And
All the ones that were there during that time period.
what did they say about
It made a
Operation
significant.
Hastings?
Uh, it was an S sandwich. It was a it was a disaster. Um, it made a significant emotional experience in their life. Uh, I didn't get into many things except India Company was apparently surrounded and held out, but took casualties. That's what the survivors in my small unit talked about. It didn't seem like they had much confidence in what was happening there, what the leadership was doing or whatever. And they were just, let's say, fighting it out to survive without a plan. Now that's probably not true, that's my interpretation by talking to these fairly seasoned, hard combat veterans that were remarkable when I was there. Uh, we uh, we did things by the book. We never took shortcuts. Yeah, I wouldn't allow that at all. And it really paid off. Every time you took a shortcut, you pay a penalty.
Yes, sir.
And that was, I'm not saying leadership was the difference, but it determines the outcome a lot of times. And if there's no leadership, there's no hope, and the individual is left up to himself. But we're a team. We're a team, and the team has to succeed. Like football, same thing.
Yes, sir.
Anyway,
Now, with third platoon, how would you describe your squad leaders when you arrived there and during the period of Operation Union One?
during Union One was a training period for the squad leaders. I had one, two that were okay, good, and my 3-5 rocket squad was probably the best in the division. And I had machine gun section; they were good. The corpsmen were wonderful. Our corpsmen were, we treat our corpsmen like they were absolutely invaluable to us. They were extremely good in what they did. You know, corpsmen's not allowed by the Geneva Convention to carry weapons. So ours only carried the Remington 1912 pump shotgun with 50 rounds of double aught buck. But they were wonderful. I only had 2 people killed during my entire tour, and we were in some really tough combat. And one of them was a corpsman that disobeyed me and went out to treat a casualty, and he exposed himself in the middle of an open ground. We had a rule: if there's a casualty, we'll bring the casualty back to a protected position, and that is where you corpsmen do your business. Protect yourself. Do not get exposed to the enemy capability. And normally they did that. The new guy just reported in, and he ran out and got whacked through the helmet, headshot, and he died. It was really bad. The guy that he went out to help was a battalion chaplain called Capodanno. Have you ever heard of that name?
Yes, sir, I have.
He had joined our company, and he had gone out and he went out to give last rites to somebody and got shot through the head himself. Too bad. He was a remarkable individual. He came out to have communion with the company as we were at a standstill for about an hour one day during Union 2, and he dropped him off out of the helicopter, and then he said, "The helicopter's got to go, so I got to go." Here, he gave me a backpack, one of the old 1941 little amphibious backs that they had in World War II, and he had 3 bottles of wine in there. He said, "Have communion with the guys." So I passed it out. I passed out to each one of the squads. They apparently had communion. Little combat humor. Anyway.
Well, from the Marines I've
Another
talked
question.
to, you have to have combat humor. It keeps you sane.
That's right.
Now, when did India Company transition to the M16? Was it just before Union?
It was not their first 2 operations. So it had been under Union One because they were horrible, absolutely horrible. With these great M14s, I mean, a tremendous weapon. Tremendous weapon. But the M16 was not. It was. It still had problems. The rounds were too compressed with expansion. So it was like going back to a Revolutionary War musket. Fire one round, take your cleaning rod, knock it out, get the next round up there, knock it out. So it went to single shot capability. The round itself was okay, and it did damage, but it wasn't effective against buildings or fortification or things like that, like an M14 was. They did have some that had stainless steel bolts that were much better for extracting the round than the other. If you ever got one like that, no matter where you went, you took that stainless steel bolt for your weapon with you. You put it in the next weapon you got. But fortunately, we didn't have many casualties in my command. Fortunately, we didn't, and I think it's because we did things by the book, did them right, didn't take shortcuts. It really pays off. It really paid off.
Yes, sir. Now, as a platoon leader, going out on your first big operation, which is Union, what did you carry with you? You've got an M16, but how much ammo, grenades wise? What else did you have on you?
I usually had 2 grenades and 1 illumination flare in my pack. Probably 6 rounds of 6 magazines of rounds for your weapon. I always had a pistol in my pack. Officers carry pistols. So I had it, but you don't have room for it with all the other stuff you got with the ammo. And I did have a combat knife, good old K-bar. Actually, I had a Randall. Do you know what a Randall is?
Mm-mm. I've never heard of a Randall.
Randall is a knife made in Texas. In our basic class, one of the guys had one. We all ordered one. It cost $110, which was a lot then. But now they cost $500 or $600. The same weapon, and it was balanced. It was wonderful. And one of the guys in my platoon, after Union 2, we went back to a rear area, and it was. So he said, "Sir, you want to sell that knife?" I said, "No, absolutely not." He said, "Is it balanced?" I said, "Sure is. Watch this." And I threw it and stuck it in a tree about 12 feet away, and the blade broke off. The blade was sticking in the tree, but it broke off about that far, but behind the handle or in front of the handle. But I still carried it in my pack the rest of the tour. And flashlight, critical. Pocket knife, can opener for sea rations. And the Marine Corps really takes care of your Marines, correct?
Yes, sir.
So we had sea rations delivered to us field all the time. Usually it was enough for a day or two, but no more than really one day, really. And when I got there in 1967, we were getting sea rations that came from Okinawa. We're getting ready to invade Japan in 1945. That invasion never took place. The buildup never took place. So those sea rations stayed in Okinawa for years. But now they've got an excuse to send them to Vietnam. Those sea rations were made in 1942. And during my first tour, 1942, 1943, we finally
Wow.
got some 43 just before it was over. And my second tour, we had 43 and 44, but we never got to 45. They probably still have them. So that's
uh,
funny.
well, I always ask this question. How were the sea rations from your experience?
Well, some of them were edible, some of them were good. The one that nobody has ever eaten is white bread. White bread, you think you'd open up like a biscuit, it's in a can, so you think it's like a biscuit. It's actually like a cream pudding that's colored white. And I had one Lance Corporal that decided to cut the top off of it, put it under a one of those little heat tabs, heat it up, toast it, make it do something besides be gel, because no one could ever eat them. They're horrible. Well, he did that. He did it for about 30 minutes. He took it out, put it in his hand. It dripped through the fingers. I I don't know anybody that ever ate. If you had them, you put them in your pack to use for defense in case you ran out of ammo at night. But it's funny.
That is. And oh goodness. Now, did you carry anything personal from you from home, photograph, letters, anything that maybe would have been a good luck charm for you?
Uh, I'm thinking. Other than Randall Dife, nothing. Uh,
And go ahead.
I think I had a picture of my mom and gal friend, but that was it. And I'm not sure we were allowed to take that into. That may have been the personal effects that you kept in storage in case you did get a chance to come home.
Yes, sir.
But other than Randall Knife, nothing.
Now, did you write anything on your helmet? I know that was common with a lot of the enlisted Marines at the time.
No. I was told don't put your rank insignia on your helmet. So I had a magic marker and put just a bar for a lieutenant up there. And I don't know if you've, hold on. You see this?
Yes, sir.
You can?
Yes, sir. You still got it.
There's a
Wow.
lieutenant. I still got that one because it was useless. Because during Union 2, I got shot through this hole right here.
I can see the hole. Wow, that's incredible.
There were two bullets that went through there, and this is where they came out in the back. Can you see that?
Wow. Yes, sir.
Here's the helmet liner. It was on the inside of it. We turn an overhead light on, see if we see it a little better. It
That had to
shattered when
create
it hit
one
the
heck of a
helmet.
headache.
Well, this is what the inside looked like. See, it shot it where it broke the webbing
Yes, I do.
right down here, and then it went through the back end up here and totally annihilated that area. That's what it looked like when it went out the other end.
Wow. Well, that will be an incredible story when we get to Union 2, but that's phenomenal that you still have that.
Well, no one wanted it. The only thing we used them for was to take a bath in or wash your socks in. because it didn't stop a bullet going in. I guess they're good for shrapnel, but not really protection, except for grenades or something like that, I guess.
Wow.
So but they look good.
Yes, they do. Now, for the first few stages of Operation Union One, India Company was OpCon to 211 Marine Artillery Battalion and then the 3-5 Security Group, correct?
Correct.
And so while that was happening, did you fully understand the size of Operation Union One? What was your perspective being OpConned in the last part of April, early May?
Uh, well, our job was to protect the artillery battalion, and that's what I remember doing. It wasn't exactly memorable. Uh, Nobody got close to them. We were very diligent about what we did, so no one got into that area. And later, for mobile, we used artillery quite a bit, and usually it was effective when you could get it. And we'll get to a point when we talk about the last day of Union 2. Very few people really know what happened because 3-5's battalion commander was hit, lost an eye. The XO was back in the rear of Chile, up near Denagan, Hill 69. And what else? Oh, my company commander was hit, medevaced. The gunnery sergeant in charge of the company there, Denota, and another company commander was hit, taking out. The Battalion 3 was hit with artillery and taken out. The Battalion 2 and 1 were injured. And so the battalion was under the command, and I'll get into this later, was under the command of a first lieutenant.
Wow.
And he was the ops officer and the commanding officer and everything. And we were in Dire Strait. And he spoke to me about relieving the pressure and conducting a night attack. And anyway, we'll get into that much later, I guess.
Yes, sir.
But it was not many people survived that. Therefore, the records are not complete. Therefore, I found out later that all the great action that many people performed during that time period was never recorded, and they were never recognized for what they did. Unbelievable.
Now, speaking of recognition, and if I've done my research correctly, I know that you received at least one Silver Star. I've read your citation for Operation Union for what happened on 9 May 1967. And according to Road of 10,000 Pains, you received an additional Silver Star and a Bronze Star. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, and leading up to,
I never got the second Silver Star because apparently when things were messed up there at the end of Union 2, I put in my forward observer, particularly for, I put him in for a Legion of Merit, and I don't think that he ever got it. I put in several other people for appropriate rewards, and they didn't get them. So,
well, and as we've talked about prior, this leaves a gap in the Marines in 1967 that not a lot of people know about, that they should know about Union 1, 2, and Swift.
well, you're right. As we'll talk about Union 2, we had dedicated at least 2 regiments, the 21st and 31st MVA regiments. A very effective elimination, and scary, but I'd like to talk about that in detail when we get there.
Yes, sir.
But
I
we're
can't wait for it.
kind of in Union One right now.
So, and to cover Union One, what was the first part of the operation like? I know that things spiked on 12 May with the ambush of Delta Company on Point, but what happened prior to that? What was India Company discovering?
Well, we India Company was based at Hill 69. I don't know if you know where that is. It's about 25 miles uh, from from Quayside City. 1-5 was at Quayside City, which was really a village, small village, and we were about 20 miles northwest of there, up near up near Highway 1. There's an airfield there, and for helicopters at least, and other things, and we were providing security to keep Highway 1 open between Chulai, Da Nang, those areas. And that's what we did after Union 1 until Union 2, which wasn't very long. But we had several operations in there that were just kind of Mickey Mouse things. And in Union 1, we had we came across a village, and there were about 10 North Vietnamese that provided resistance. We attacked them and enveloped them, and they got out of there. And we found out that there was a tunnel underground in this village that they were in. And Zach, I don't know if you ever know the story on the big picture of what was happening in Vietnam. The North Vietnamese started to move there in 1954, 55, and they continued to matriculate into South Vietnam and to cause political turmoil and those things for the aftermath of the French, if you would.
Yes, sir.
And the people that were causing the problems were North Vietnamese that had been evacuated by the American Navy in 1955. Did you know that?
No, sir.
They were the North Vietnamese Catholics that were forced to leave North Vietnam, and they brought them down to South Vietnam by Navy ships, U.S. Navy, and just dropped them off. They didn't have anybody at the bus station to meet them. They didn't have any provisions, and Vietnam is an agrarian society. You have land, you raise your crops, you raise your livestock, you go fishing, do whatever, but it is your land, and that's your little monopoly set, if you would. And these 1,100,000 North Vietnamese that came down had nothing. They had no land. So what did they do? They became Robin Hood. They lived and that was what we would call Viet Cong later on. And that's what they did. They stole from the people and harassed the people and took the goods and did whatever because they didn't have any heritage land that went along with the model of what their society was like in that day. And that's kind of what culminated in the Vietnam experience later on. Well, the North Vietnamese saw an opportunity, and they started to matriculate units into South Vietnam. So they took the Ho Chi Minh Trail in Laos and Cambodia mostly, but then it got into Asha Valley, way over in the west part, which is only a mile from the border of Laos. It got into South Vietnam there and went all the way down. But there were 7 areas that exodus into South Vietnam all the way down the western flank of the country. There were points that they would come off and come back into Vietnam. And when they came back into Vietnam, they found harbor sites there in these mountains, and they started to hollow out the mountains, dig out the mountains, and make rest stops and recreation areas there, recreation places to sleep, places to put your ammo, and later on places to put your vehicles when they were using on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, where to put your hospitals, and where to put your communication things. So there's 8 of those, 7 of those actually in South Vietnam, one now just above the border there in North Vietnam. And that's where the major operations really, from the North Vietnamese viewpoint, culminated and started. It originated right there, and that's where they propagated combat into these areas. Did you know that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we didn't know that till later. I didn't know that till later. And in this Operation Union 2, we went around a mountain there. That was what they used there to control the 2nd NVA Division. That's where they harbored. It was about 800, 900 feet tall. It was thick, overgrown with bush. No North Vietnamese were ever up there. But Union 2 was fought going around a circle around that battle from LZ Blue Jay all the way to my attack later on that culminated that issue. But they had harbor sites there, and we never, ever exploited it. After I left the battalion, they had 122 rockets that came in there. They were stored in that mountain, in the bottom of the mountain. They had a 200-bed hospital there. They had a mess hall. They had supply centers. They had the bottom of it dug out so the trucks could go in there and harbor, so that the Air Force wouldn't hit them on the Ho Chi Minh Trail over in Laos and Cambodia. But it's amazing what our intel did not use and tell us, and that was a major error on our part.
Now, during Operation
Anyway,
Union,
sorry to get off track.
No, you're fine, sir. But it goes back to this, that during Union, for the first part, India Company found lots of evidence of bunkers, caches, and NVA movement that led to this lack of intelligence, correct?
Yes, absolutely correct.
And so, in moving into that first part of May, you're finding the evidence, you're finding the bunkers, but you're not really seeing the 2nd NVA Division. Was that getting spooky out there, not knowing that the NVA are here, but you haven't found contact?
It's not like our classroom things at basic school where you get intelligence and intelligence tells you what's really going on in front of you. It's like you're chasing the cat and you're finding out as you go. And later on, when we had some experience, we started to develop a little intelligence ourselves, but it's kind of what you can see on the battlefield, what's going on here, not what the enemy capability is, nor what his objectives are. And it's kind of like being in the dark. But after the Tet Offensive, goodness gracious. And this isn't part of my story, but I was actually up a division then in Intel, but I did a couple of force recon patrols way out, and I did those for 3 weeks, I think. 2 weeks at one time and about a week and a half at another time. And you really find out and understand what was really happening on a much larger picture. But sometimes that didn't get down to the lower echelons. That's really too bad.
Absolutely.
But we killed 1,200,000 North Vietnamese in Tet Offensive 1968. That's a lot.
Yes, sir.
We had 58,000 killed in Vietnam, U.S., but we had 1,200,000 killed in less than 30 days, North Vietnamese. And after that, when we took them from 13 divisions down to less than 5.5 divisions in their entire army, It took them years to repopulate and restaff those units again. Uh, it took the last 3 months of my first tour, no, 2 months, March and April. The only thing we did was box up weapons, give them to the Navy. They took them about 60 miles off the shore in Vietnam and dropped them. Millions of weapons. Millions. It was astounding. I think people, if it was a bolt action rifle, you got to have a war souvenir, if you would. They didn't let you have AK-47 or any automatic weapon, but it's my wife just went by.
Now,
anyway, that's
and with India Company fighting, and in many ways 3-5, going toe to toe against the 2nd NVA division for about 6 months consistently. Walk me through the 9 May 1967 cave tunnel fight that you received the Silver Star for. So what happened on that day?
okay. That was in Union 1.
Yes, sir.
We had attacked and knocked a unit out of this village, and we had like 11 or 12 bodies, and we captured about 8 prisoners. The other thing they don't teach you basic skills is what to do with a prisoner. There's no protocol. So what do you do with these guys? You can't let them go free. What do you do with them? You can't take them with you. Anyway, it's that's one of the unsolved problems I was not prepared for. I can tell you. So we kept them there, and we found out there was a big tunnel in this village, and the males had all escaped into this tunnel when we had attacked there. And the males I'm talking about were not just the males from the village. They were actually North Vietnamese that were in the hooches there, and they were in one of the tunnels, and they were escaping through there. And one of the, I guess, one of the airstrikes we had on that area closed off the tunnel, and it collapsed internally. Now this was probably 4 feet above the surface, where the top of the tunnel starts, and it goes down another probably 3 or 4 feet. And so one of our squad leaders noticed that some of the NVA had gone into there, so he decided to go in, and he went in and found out that they were heavily fortified in there, and he came back out and made that report. And we for some reason I decided to go in there and find out what the story was and how many people were in there. I was a great shot, and I was the only. We had a horrible day of qualification on the range when at basic school. We had a thunderstorm, raining, 45-mile-per-hour wind, and nobody qualified expert in my entire company except me. So that was a pretty good shot. So I decided I'm going in with this young guy, and he was one of my best, very best men, a guy named Earl Heaster, who was tall, thin, lanky. He was too tall to get in the tunnel. He went in with me the first time we saw the North Vietnamese, and we fired our M16s. They got jammed with weapons because you can only get one round out and whatever. So we went back in with 45 pistols, and we went in 3 or 4 times and always came up against the enemy. But we had used tear gas in there, so they couldn't see too well, I guess. And we were able to overcome them. And the next day, we found where the tunnel had collapsed back there, and we dug in through the rear side when we pulled out maybe 11 bodies and a whole ton of their maps and operation plans and things like that. And uh, a bunch of logistics rifles and those things, North Vietnamese rifle, whatever. And that was the story of that. But we went in 3 or 4 times, and on the third time, we came out of there because the tear gas was getting in our through the gas mask we were wearing, and we came out of the tunnel, ripped the gas mask off. I ran into the guy in front of me because I couldn't see him with the gas mask, and I got this small little guy named Carol to go in instead of Heaster. Heaster was too big, couldn't bend over, couldn't do whatever. So we went back in. Company commanders out there. What are you doing? What are you doing? What's going on in there? What's going on in there? And we ran out, and I ran into the back of him, and then this North Vietnamese guy ran out behind me, and he couldn't see because didn't have a gas mask on, and he ran right into the back of me. We ran captured. It was kind of funny. There's a
That's
lot of things that happen in combat that are funny.
well, it's incredible. That the tunnel fight. I mean, it's people don't often associate what goes through and how you have to approach a tunnel. I mean, the use of tear gas to push the enemy out and blind them. I mean, that's tactical brilliance.
Well, we didn't have any experience. I didn't have a class in tunnels at basic school, but we felt confident that we had the firepower and we had the capability. And I heard that there were side tunnels in there, and the enemy had to bring their AK-47 around and get out in the open to fire, and that presents a target. So just be prepared. Be prepared, and we did, and we were able to overcome them with no casualties, which was really good. And I think we went in and out 4 times, had to rearm with ammunition, pistols, those things. We were going to use grenades in there, but grenades in a tunnel might cause a collapse as well as a fragmentation effect that you wanted to do.
Yes, sir.
So that's my little experience with tunnels, but we were able to overcome, and it was a successful venture.
Well, and if I may ask, Mr. Moore, from your perspective, what is combat like when you're in that situation and you realize that, it's a kill or be killed situation? You're getting shot at, you have to do your job. What's it like from your perspective?
This may sound a little crass, but I never thought that I didn't know what to do ever in Vietnam. That's not true. During the last part of that tour, I was up in intelligence, and I had this is just a side thing, and I was in charge of reconnaissance and all the reconnaissance in the First Marine Division, and all the other like activities that we had with reconnaissance, air observers, all sorts of things. So we had a section of air observers, and a couple of our air observers got sick and got hit and things, so they needed somebody to call in artillery and naval gunfire, and I had the courses what to do. So I went up, and we went out and grabbed in fact, in Quai San Valley area, and the naval aviator who was a Marine was flying the plane, and he got shot through the right shoulder, and he was bleeding like a stuck pig. So I'm in the back seat of this thing. I stuck a handkerchief in there, and stopped the bleeding a little bit, and he said, "Okay, you got to fly the plane." Well, how do you do it? He said, sit, stick over there on the wall. That's that metal rod. Screw it in the hole in the middle of the floorboard. Okay, that makes the flaps go up and down and right and left and whatever. He said, see those 2 things down there? One of them is gas. It makes it go faster or whatever. And we had to go back to the night. I had to land the airplane because he was bleeding out and he really couldn't use his arms. And we came in at 65 knots, and we landed. We were doing 35 knots, and it was like a kite coming into land. It was that smooth. It was unbelievable, easy, but it was kind of funny to do that. That's I never had that experience before. So I asked all these naval aviators that I've got through the years. I keep up with a lot. I mean, I'm in a history club out here, and we have a ton of people, B-52 pilots and naval aviators and whatever. And I ask all of them, do your number of takeoff and landings equal? They think about it and say, well, maybe not. I don't think you'd call that a landing. Uh, so I ask all the services this. The Army, mostly helicopters, said that their takeoff and landings are 50%. Now, helicopters get shot down and they also are difficult to fly, so I could understand that. 50%. The Air Force, B-52s and things, is not their fighter aircraft and things like that, are actually 85%. The naval aviators, carrier naval aviators, are 13%. It's much, much more difficult to hit a moving target at 35 knots, and you're going on a slanted deck, and it's difficult. Anyway,
I'm sure it is. Now,
that's some of the funny things that happened.
well, then you need that. And so after the 9 May tunnel fight, the next day, if I'm not mistaken, Bravo and Charlie Company and 1-3 were hit hard on Hill 110, correct?
Yes.
And so India Company was operating, if I'm not mistaken, a few clicks to the east of that. And then when does Delta Company join 3-5, or is OpCon to 3 and 5?
I don't know that. I didn't. It was above my pay grade then. I don't know that, but I do know that the next morning, Delta Company put out a patrol to find the enemy, and before that, we came off of Hill. I think it was in this little valley northwest of Quezon City, about 6 or 8 clicks. We came off that, and we made a night attack up there the night before with 2 battalions, supposedly. Well, actually, it turned out to be 3 companies, 2 from 3-5 and 1 from 5. And we found the enemy. Not much was up there, really. Overcome them fairly easily. Stayed there the next morning, got resupplied. Then we came down there. We're running to find the enemy again. It's getting late in the afternoon. We go through Quezon City and out to the east on some road out there. I don't remember the name of the road or the number, but we're going to almost to the east, and Delta 1-5 was in front of us, and 1-5 got ambushed from the south side of the road, from a village, and they never really recovered and took command of that situation. So I'm in front. At about that time, I had kind of gained a little reputation in the battalion, and I was moving with India Company, and I was in front of India Company, and we immediately saw this open field where we could move directly south and flank them on that side. And we had deployed down there, and we were spread out in a line formation. We're ready to assault in. We could never get clearance from battalion to make that assault. So we stayed there in that linear formation all night long. And it was a wasted opportunity. We could have overcome the enemy and really taken command of the situation, but it didn't happen. So the next morning, Delta Company sent out a patrol to regain contact with the enemy because they matriculated to the south. And when they went to the south side, they went out maybe 2 clicks, 3 clicks, and that patrol got ambushed, and 11 of the 13 people were killed, and two were actually, one had a chest wound, one had a stomach wound. They were patched up. North Vietnamese patched them up, gave them water, took their weapons, and left them there. So they were living when I got there, and we cordoned off that area and marshaled the bodies up that were in there. And that's where we, late that afternoon, that's kind of where it happened. So we looked for a defensive thing, and 1-5 was still in front of us and kind of leading that area on the terrain. So they went over more to the east and to south, and they set up in a position someplace over there. I don't know where. But then my company came up, and my company kind of joined my unit. And that's when the company commander, McElroy, was hit through the shoulder. And he made his gunnery sergeant Denoda, was actually the acting company commander. But I had a platoon up there facing the enemy. And this river was just down the riverbed below us, the Songlili River. And I think that was Hill 110 also. But we stayed there that night, and that was an extremely memorable evening. The North Vietnamese attacked us 5 times during that evening, every hour on the hour. We ran out of ammo 3 times. India Company was about 1,000 meters behind me. They ferried ammo up to me, and my company was on the other side, but they were facing more around the flank of the hill and the back end of the hill that covered that area, because the hill went around that direction also on that side. And we were stretched out in a linear fashion. Well, they sent Bravo Company from 1st Battalion over to hook up with me, and they hooked into me at 9:30 that evening, and we coordinated our coordination points and did that, and did the all the coordination for supporting fires and things like that. And I left, and then I went back out at 11 o'clock in the evening and checked the lines again. They said, "Sir, you know that unit over there got up and marched away. There's nobody over there." And this is about 11:30. So I'm going back, and then about 12 o'clock, the first night attack started, and they hit us with everything. It was, so I put my one of my machine guns over there, and the only thing they did was fire out to that side under the flares when the enemy was over there, to keep them from being flanked around to our rear. We were secure on the other side. Mike had the command post over there, and they really didn't have much firing, but they're faced forward a little bit too. They had about 20%, 15%, 20% of that activity was coming up the hill from the village down, and the village down there. And the enemy attacked at 12 midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and 5 o'clock. The first 3, I don't know how we managed to hold them off, but we did. And we killed tons of them. But the next morning, when the bodies were out there and whatever, but after the 3rd attack, their numbers are about half what they were before. We had good flares. We could see the enemy. We just didn't have ammo. We ran out of ammo 3 times and got resupplied, fortunately. And finally, during the last attack, we went out and picked up North Vietnamese weapons and their ammo, and that's what we were using for the last attack. But so the next morning, this corporal came around. He had this North Vietnamese body, and he had a stick with the arm stuck out like this, and he'd wrapped some rope around each one of those. He said, "See it right there? That's where I shot him. Right there, 6 feet away, bam." Bizarre battlefield humor. But so we also searched out the bodies and put all the weapons aside. We had over close to 200 weapons that we captured, and bodies. I don't know how many bodies, but the bodies were all stacked up on one side over there too. And the funny thing was, uh, we found two things of interest. One was a flag that the guy had on the inside of his shirt as a North Vietnamese flag, and his diary was with him. He had a little diary that he kept, and this Chu Hoi, we had the interpreter at Chu Hoi with a company, and he read the diary. He said, "This guy was back in Hanoi last year for their rifle squad competition, and his squad was the #1 rifle squad in the North Vietnamese Army, and he won this flag, and it's had some things in Vietnamese that are embroidered on it, and he had it folded up in his." And he had some personal letters in there and things that we didn't get into, but it was one of the experiences of war, and you never know what to do with that. You just,
Yes, sir.
I think we took that and gave it to the intelligence people and said, maybe you can get this back. It was addressed to somebody up in North Vietnam, probably a fiance or somebody, but maybe you would like to do that, whatever.
Now, during the night, when ammo's running low and out, how were you resupplied? Was it coming from Mike Company or were they flying it in from Chu Lai?
It's coming from India Company.
Okay.
My company, India Company, was I guess it was the Battalion Reserve then, because they were about 1,000 meters behind the front lines. My company had that side of the hill in the rear end, and the real rear end was kind of southwest, so it was off of the slant there, but it followed the terrain. We followed the terrain up there. The military crest of the hill. That's where our defense was. So we had good positions and great, great fields of fire. And the back end was open. It went back toward our own company, India Company, and they gave me ammo. They started to get a little stingy with it. We're using it, so we could use it, and we did.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, because this is the fight of this is 13 May leading into 14 May that night morning. On 12 May,
Yes,
India Company had a Marine receive the Navy Cross, Lawrence Kane. Does that ring a bell, sir?
it does.
Now,
He was from another company, and go ahead.
oh, I
Go
was
ahead.
going to ask, do you recall anything about Lawrence Kane and the Navy Cross and what happened with her? I've read a citation, but you were there.
Was he in 1-5 or 2 or 3-5?
He was India 3-5, yes, sir.
India?
Yes, sir. Per his citation, at least.
I don't think so. I think he may have been in one of the other companies in 3-5.
Okay.
Maybe it was Mike Company. Anyway, he was.
And then with the night fight that ends up happening on 13 May, what's the fight look like at night from your perspective as a platoon leader? Tracer fire going around. What describe the picture of this night fighting against the NVA?
Actually, the night fights are just like day flights because they're all limited. The little hand flares that we had were wonderful. The aviation flares are unbelievable. I mean, it is as bright as noonday. So you have good illumination of the battlefield. And fortunately, the aviation support was really good during that time period for us. We had good illumination, and there's during the contact night periods, it was really good. So we had good visible targets and good fields of fire. And one of the things that we always did, regardless, we never cut corners on preparing your defense at night, ever. There are I had a couple of squad leaders that didn't want to do that initially, got rid of them. That set a precedent. And then we always did it right. But no matter how long it took, you had to do it right. And then you had to have a good defense, and it works if you do it right. But if you take shortcuts, there's always a hiccup.
Yes, sir. Mr. Moore, do
Lawrence
you mind
Kane.
if I take a tiny, tiny little break to run to the restroom real quick, sir?
Yeah, shoot, go.
Now, with resuming where we were, with the NVA attacking in these waves on this night, did India Company fix bayonets? Did you order your platoon to attach bayonets in case it got to that point of the fighting?
I did until the fourth time we'd run out of ammo. We had 57 rounds left of rifle ammo. We had about 30 rounds of pistol ammo, and we had some shotgun because the corpsmen were okay, but we were essentially out of ammo for what we were facing, and that means hundreds of people coming up the hill against us. So I stood up in the flares up there like daylight, fix bayonets. You know what? Everybody stood up and cheered. Yay! Yay! They carried on like it was a high school football victory or something. But it was motivating to see that reaction. We never had to use bayonets, I don't think, but we were prepared.
And if my research is
My
correct, go ahead,
philosophy is
sir.
if you have to use a bayonet, you let them get too close. Pardon me? My philosophy is if you fix bayonet, you've let them get too close.
Yes, sir.
Uh,
Now, during the night, did you have any fire support from artillery, any close air support on station?
we had air observers up above us. Number one, uh, as we'll talk about it during Union 2, we had close air support up there at night, and that was good and marginal. But we nearly always had uh, during our intense combat, had air observers up there overlooking the battlefield. Um, and artillery was a big thing. Um, we had, internally we had our 60 millimeter mortars that we carried ourselves. So I had one of those or two of those in my platoon, because we didn't have a weapons platoon. We just divided up the weapons, 2 machine guns, 2 rockets, and 2 mortars per platoon. So we were always heavy in manpower in the Marine Corps compared to the Army. Our squads are bigger. I think they're much better prepared. They're much more capable. We train them quite differently than the Army. It's fire teams are indispensable. Well, just would you hold it just a second?
Yes, sir.
I found something last night. I keep this on my refrigerator, and I will find it in a second. These are the times. Dak, I'm sorry to take so long, but I wanted to show you this.
Okay, what
Probably
you
hard
got?
to see. It's a picture of a rice paddy.
I can see it. Yes, sir. I can make out the paddy and the dikes along the side. Yes, sir.
You see those little dots in there?
Yes, sir.
Here, here, here. That's my platoon moving in Union 2.
Wow.
Actually, it's in Union 1. It's when we're going down to bail out Delta Company that
Yes,
had that
sir.
unit ambushed. And this who was an old Korean War vet, who was an enlisted guy, and did this during World War II, but he's now a first lieutenant, made that picture.
Wow.
And he looked me up and sent it to me. I got to know him really well before he passed away. His name was Jim Sanders. And he said, I flew in Korea and I flew in Vietnam. I had 2 tours in Vietnam, flying air observer. He said, I've never seen a Marine unit move tactically in the correct formation when they were in combat. Yours is the first one I've ever seen. Everybody in there was spread out at a minimum of 50 meters when you're going to cross these open areas. So a mortar round or an artillery round couldn't get 2 of them, whatever. And he said, made that picture. I want to send you that picture. That's one of my most prized possessions.
That's amazing.
But I told you that during basic school, we learned how to do things. And if you take shortcuts, it just doesn't work.
Yes, sir.
But that's one of my most prized possessions, is by a guy named First Lieutenant Jim Sanders.
Well,
But when you're in an open area, you stay spread out. When you're in a closed areas, you have to compress. But you have to keep the fire support. And if you use a fire team correctly, you got an automatic rifleman. You've got 2 people that protect him. You got flank security. You got the front and rear guy are also fighting, but they're protecting your asset, which is your automatic weapon. Now, when we ran out of our automatic weapons and we turned in our M16, everybody's got an automatic weapon, if you would. And the fire discipline was horrible, but the rounds jamming in the chamber took us back to Revolutionary War. So you have 4 rounds fired in a 4 fire team, and then you have to get out the plunger and whack it. Anyway,
now,
there's a bunch of humor in War II.
and it's what I love about interviewing Marines is the honesty that I always get. Going back to that photograph, India Company, your platoon, you're going to go bail out Delta. Did you have any radio communication with Delta in this firefight and in this time of Operation Union 1?
No.
And speaking of
None.
radio, what was your call
Maybe
sign?
the company commander did, but I did.
Yes, sir.
Maybe the company commander did. I did. I kept telling the company commander also is hooked in the battalion. The Marine Corps companies are only hooked into the company commander in the company. So I didn't have communication. I wish that I had it. We had a perfect opportunity when Delta Company was ambushed. I mean, that the night before when they were, the battalion was ambushed from the south side. We had a perfect opportunity to envelop them and to cause significant damage. We were spread out. We were in assault formation. We are spread out probably 300 to 450 meters. We just needed to get maybe another unit in there with us. I kept telling the company commander that, and the company commander, and we stopped, and then we didn't do anything all night long. And the next day, we went out and we found that recon patrol had been decimated. Too bad. Too
Now,
bad.
and going back to the communication side real quick, do you remember any of the call signs India Company used during this time period?
Uh, well, I was India 3, so the other two commanders were India 1, India 2. That we had um, uh, air support, air observer, but he was with the battalion. Artillery, same thing with the battalion. We didn't have direct artillery support, but later on, when I became a company commander, um, I had a basic school classmate named Stan Holmes. Stan Holmes was somebody that everybody would wish they looked like Stan. Stan looked like Mr. Adonis. He looked like could won the Olympics. He was a hammer thrower at the Naval Academy, All-American
Yes, sir.
football player there. He had a 32-inch waist and a 55-inch chest, and he was handsome and debonair and just and a great guy. And he was a health nut. He worked out all the time. He healthy. Do we have time for a short story?
Yes, we do.
Okay. I had to go back to Da Nang once and be the pay officer for the company. This is between Union 1 and Union 2. And I had to go back and check out money from dispersing for India Company 3-5. And they pay you in 4 different ways. One is your direct deposit thing. It's kind of like putting money in the bank till you get out of combat if you don't get killed. Number 2 is American greenbacks, cash. The third thing is piastres. That's South Vietnamese money. And the fourth thing is like monopoly money. It's called military script. You can only use it in the PX. We never saw a PX. So anyway, you have to go back and you have to check out. Each man gets a thing beforehand, so he can tell you what denominations to check out. Then the payoffs just to check it out and verify it and go through that and sign for the money. Well, it took forever, particularly to get down to piastres and all this other stuff. So it took longer than I had, and I did it actually pretty quick, he said. But I had to stay there overnight and keep that money someplace in a safe overnight, and then the next morning go back out to the field. Well, for the first time ever in Vietnam, I got to eat in a military mess hall with 1st Recon Battalion at near division headquarters next to the dispersing office. I spent an overnight there with Andy, 4th Recon platoon commander in my class, good guy. And I spent the night with him, hid the money under the mattress there that night. Next morning, got up and went to the mess hall, and they had scrambled eggs, as many as you want, fried eggs, pastries, all this stuff, and chocolate milk and white milk. And Stan used to always say, this guy Stan Holmes, the FO, said, I'd give $100 for an ice cold glass of milk. And he said it all the time. So I went to the mess hall and said, you got one of those, they've got them in these machines. It's like a big sack of milk, probably 5 gallons. They hook it up. It's got a little drain tube on the bottom. And I said, you got any of those that's, he said, I got some chocolate milk. It's down that low. I said, would you mind if I had that? I told him about this friend. And they wrapped it up for me and put it in a plastic bag, put ice in the bag, put that in another plastic bag, and I put it in my pack. I went back to the field. I said, Stan, you won't believe it. I had about 8 eggs this morning for breakfast and bacon, and I had 5 or 6 glasses of ice cold chocolate milk. He said, I'd give $100 for that right now. said, really? He actually paid me $150 because I had 4 or 5 glasses. I gave it back to him an hour or two later, but it's funny things that happen. Anyway, where were we?
Well, what happened the morning after the night fight on 13-14 May? After the bodies have been stacked and whatnot, well, what is India Company doing then?
Well, we just were cleaning up then. We continued to move, and we were mortared once, and uh, Union 1 just kind of played out. It just kind of played out. We went back to the rear then. I had an Apache Indian. Oh, we got to a rear area, set up a camp there up near Hill 69, and set up a camp. That means you took a poncho out and made a lean-to out of it, and you slept under it, and that was it. But the regimental commander met us out there after Union 1 was over, and he had a couple of filled up with ice cold beer and with ice in these little trailers that go with the jeeps, and he had regimental cooks out there, and they cooked breakfast for us. So we had breakfast and a beer or so. But most people didn't drink beer. It's amazing what they didn't. It was it affected you in that hot climate. So, but one of our Apache Indians, who was one of my scouts that I used in the 3rd Squad, had about a half a beer, and then he's out there. He took off his everything but his underwear, put a bandana around his head. He gets his bayonet out. He's jumping off of these things, attacking people like he's like it's the Wild West or something. And so we didn't have anything to do. And one of the guys had a pair of handcuffs. So we handcuffed him to this pole and let him stay there. But and we put a guard with him, till he sobered up or whatever. And this guard was drinking a beer, and the fumes from that beer made this guy go crazy. I mean, I've heard about Indians and, in spirits, but I'll tell you what, it's true. Absolutely true.
Gosh. Now, how many casualties did India Company take during Operation Union 1?
Mike took some. Hotel took some. We didn't take many. We took 3 or 4, I think. First platoon took some. I don't know. Not many. Not many.
And then, was India Company wearing flak
I
jackets in
took
this time period?
I took 2 my entire time there. One was a captain, and the other one was that Hill 120. We defended that thing. We were attacked 5 times that night. My very best squad leader was a guy named Boots, Heinrich Boots. He was from Holland. He came to this country. He joined the Marine Corps in order to apply for advanced citizenship. And I had stopped the company one morning because got some mail in, and he got his citizenship paper. So I stopped the company one morning as company commander and gave him his citizenship papers. And the entire company had to, except for security out. Uh, had this big rousing thing for him, but he was unbelievably proficient. He was by far the smartest and best prepared squad leader I had. He was unbelievable. And during a night attack later, um, that night attack, we got attacked 5 or 6 times. On the third one, enemy mortars came in and it hit right next to him, and a piece of shrapnel went through his front teeth and into his neck and severed his vocal cords and his nerve system there. And I did a thyroid trachectomy on him, cut him open with a
Yes, sir.
little knife, and then stuck an empty ink pen cartridge down there to let him breathe. And we kept him alive for probably 2 or 3 hours, but he died around 5:30 in the morning. He was by far my best squad leader, though. Remarkable. And he's the second person I had killed. That's the only person I had killed. I thought we were fortunate, but that piece of shrapnel just pierced his vocal cords and his nerve system.
Sir. Now, with that and thinking about the time of Union 2 and Swift, it's a remarkable record as a platoon leader, because India Company was in heavy contact through Union 2 and Swift.
That's true. I got a lot to tell you about Union 2.
Oh, yes, sir.
I'm just looking at the time.
Well, I got one final question, and then we'll schedule another one, and I'll let you go for the day, Mr. Moore. But was India Company wearing flak jackets in this time period?
Never.
And why not?
Because we found out one thing before Union 1 started. We had not my unit, but one of the other units in our battalion had 2 guys shot. They were wearing flak jackets. We only had 2 small skirmishes, I think, beforehand, but these guys got shot, and the round went through the flak jacket, through them, and stuck in the flak jacket on the backside. So a flak jacket's good against mortars and maybe artillery, but it isn't good against rifle fire. And the only thing you could use it for, well, when we started on Union 1, I think we did have flak jackets, and everybody took them off and left them on the helicopter, because the only thing they did was sit on them in case you got shot from that direction. And that's all they're good for. Otherwise, they're 15 pounds of excess weight.
Yes, sir.
But we never wore them after that. That's one of those other funny things that happened to war. If you're probably in a defensive situation, like Quezon and those things, you got a lot of artillery and mortars coming in. They're probably much more effective, but not in a mobile environment. We were always extremely mobile, fast moving, and usually tried to be as light as you can with as much ammo as you can, and food sometimes. The food was a third priority, really.
Yes, sir.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, sir. No, that makes perfect sense. All right, Mr. Moore. We've had an excellent interview today. I know you've got a big evening planned, and I won't keep you. So I always end my interviews.
I got it.
Go ahead, sir.
Go ahead.
After you, sir.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was gonna say that I always
thank you.
finish my interviews.
Listen, call me
ahead.
Kenny. Please call me Kenny. Please call me Kenny. And it's been a pleasure. And I know I got a little verbose there and little things about little things, but it's the human side of war. It's easy to write sometimes a script of just the bare basics of what happened then, but it takes the emotion out of it. And um, everybody's got a story to tell, I think, and everybody, played a significant role in some aspect. Mine was uh, a good one. I really enjoyed it. I thought I was extremely well prepared for what I did, and I thought it showed.
Yes,
But
sir.
I didn't make small unit errors and didn't allow myself to be compressed, as we'll find out next time. We started out on Union 2. My company commander was pushing. We were more, I'll tell you this real quickly, then cover it in detail. But we went into LZ Blue Jay. We're the first unit in there. And the rice paddy that we went into was long and narrow. It was about 75 yards wide and maybe 400 yards long. And it was full of water. So we got there, the helicopters wouldn't land. They hovered about 4 feet, 6 feet off the water, and you jumped out. When we did that, we sunk up to our knees in mud, and it took 20 to 30 minutes to go 10 or 15 meters over to the side of the rice paddy and get out of the rice paddy. And it was excruciating physical demand to get out of mud deep things that went up to your knees. But we had a water buffalo that came around the corner of the rice paddy and saw us out there. And these water buffaloes did not like human smell, particularly Americans, apparently. And this thing paused to the ground and snorted and blew hot smoke or whatever and got ready to charge. And each one of my squad leaders carried M79 grenade launchers. And a weapon too, maybe, but they definitely carried an M79. And it was a great little, grenade launcher. Only good for about 400 yards, but they were good with it, and it did a good job. So this buffalo came up around the corner and it started snorting, and the squad leader was the closest person to him, and he shot him in the head with one of these M79 rounds. We hit the skull right in front of his face, glanced up in the air. It hadn't got enough revolutions to explode, but it didn't penetrate the skull, and exploded about 10 feet above him. And this water buffalo stood there and shook his head back and forth like trying to clear his head. And he was going to charge again. So the machine gunner shot him with about 50 rounds of machine gun ammo, and that was it for the water buffalo.
Wow.
But it took us a while to get that. And meanwhile, we'd set up a security thing around LZ Blue Jay. I'll tell you this next time. But the company commander came there and he's ready to move out finally. And he pushed us to attack without allowing us to do an operation order. And I'll talk to you about that. Do you know what an operation order is?
No, sir.
It's a 5-paragraph order, we call it. Oh, situation, mission, execution, logistics, and coordination. Coordination, and then logistics and whatever. So you absolutely do one of those every single time. If you've got an operation or whatever, and this company commander was a staff officer that had come in from Japan, where he was there as the more the age to the Navy admiral, was there for a couple of years, social thing, more social than anything. And he wouldn't give us an opportunity to write and prepare your order and give your order to your subordinates. So that's kind of where we started in Union too, with that issue and that problem. I'll get into that in some detail, but sometimes you're forced to compromise, and every time you compromise, you pay a price. So you can't do that. That's the one lesson that I would leave with you.
Yes, sir.
Zach, has been great to get to know you this morning, and I guess this is working pretty good. I'm not used to these Zoom things, but working pretty good.
Yes, sir. Kenny, it's been phenomenal. I always do this. Thank you for your service, Kenny, and welcome home. It's an honor and a pleasure for you to sit down and open up your story as a platoon leader in India 3-5 in 1967 to me. It means a lot, sir.
Well, thank you. Well, next time we'll get to talk about being a company commander.
Yes,
Second
sir.
lieutenant for a while.